And we're live. I am so excited to be here today with best-selling author Michele Ashman Bell here in our book chat book club. Thank you so much for
Hi,
joining us, Michele.
thank you for
Now,
having
I have known you for quite some time now. I was trying to think if it's been, goodness, like 15 years or something, a long time.
me. That's
Uh,
the number I actually did also.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to go ahead and read your bio, even though, we know you, or we're going to get to know you more today. Michele Ashman Bell grew up in St. George, Utah, and in fourth grade, her teacher wrote on her report card that she had a tendency to daydream and would probably do well with creative writing. Her love for books and learning about people and places has helped her make her teacher's prediction come true. Michele is the author of many books and Christmas stories. She is married and is the mother of 4 children and a grandma of 10. Aside from supporting her children in all of their many activities, she loves to travel, do research for her books, and eat chocolate. A lot of my favorite things too.
Uh, That's why we're friends, Julie. We have so much
That,
in common.
that's what it is. It must be. So tell me about your writing journey because you've been in the business a long time.
I have that is actually a very true statement. I was in the business, well, as a published author, I've done it a long time, but also it took me a while to get published. So I would say that the book world and publishing has just been more of my life has been spent doing this than not. But my love of books, like the bio said, it really began mostly in third grade. I distinctly remember having a moment when like, okay, so picture this: you're at school and you're out at recess, and you come in, and the teacher wants everyone to just kind of calm down. It's after our lunch recess, and she wanted us all to just kind of calm down so she would read to us in after our noon recess. And so she'd have us all lay our heads on the desk, and then she'd read. And I think being able to just kind of detach myself from the schoolroom situation and just go into my own imagination, and I'm sure I would shut my eyes and just listen to the words, it would become like a movie in my head, and I could see the story as she was reading it as a movie in my head. I think that helped me understand that I'm a very visual person. And so I would just see these stories come to life in my mind. And I remember having that experience, like, this is magical. I mean, the story she's reading, and I remember the book. It was My Father's Dragon. And it was so cool to see that and visualize the whole story. So from that point on, I became an avid reader. And I think that's where this whole journey began, was with the love of reading. And I immersed myself in Laura Ingalls Wilder. Those were my go-to books for years. Like probably until sixth grade, I just read them on repeat. And then, of course, I started reading a little bit more mature books as I got older. And then I kind of got, during high school, got into romance books. Laverne Spencer was like one of my favorite authors. And there was an LDS author named Dorothy Keddington. And I started reading her books. There weren't a lot of like the LDS authors, Jack Whalen, Charlie, um, and Dorothy Keddington. And I started reading their books. And honestly, I would get in trouble in high school because I would put the book I was reading inside the textbook during class, and I'd just be reading. Yeah, and I'd get in trouble because the teacher, he's not stupid. He's like, I can totally see what you're doing. Put your book away. You can read it later. Pay attention. Um, but I just loved reading. Now, the way it segued into writing was the fact that I would read some stories and be unhappy with the endings or certain things about the book. And I think, "Oh, I would change that totally." And I still do that today. I don't know if you do that. I don't know if this is an author thing or what. We should have a discussion with other authors and see.
Yeah.
I kind of have a control problem. I feel like I like to control situations. So when I read a book or watch a movie and I'm like, I totally would do that. And I'm a happy ending person. So that's another problem I have with, like, I remember watching Titanic, and I'm like, he totally could have fit on that door. Are you kidding me? I'll never forgive that movie for doing that because I thought it was just ludicrous that he didn't get up on that door. Right. So there's my prop. So I think those things. Oh, and then I was a journal keeper. Like in starting in eighth grade, I wrote my journal every night. I think all those things just kind of fell into place for me. And one day I had a 3 year old and a new baby. I think she's about 6 months. And I was reading a little story in Good Housekeeping, and it just kind of annoyed me. I'm like, that is so stupid. I could probably write something better than that. And it was kind of a like a challenge for myself. Like, well, can you? Could you? You should try. So I called off to the library because I thought maybe there's a book about writing. That's how naive I was. Maybe someone's written a book about how to write books. And when I got to the library and saw the vast amounts of books in the library, I just went crazy. Like, I couldn't carry all the books I wanted. And I would read them and then go back and get more and read them. And then I took a community education class, and the teacher, gosh, I can't even remember his name now. It's been so many years. But he was really encouraging, and he was really positive, and he just was like a cheerleader. And he said, if you love it, you just go for it and see what happens. So that's kind of where it all began for me. As the long answer, I'm so sorry, but
Oh,
that's
no.
journey exactly was that. And once I took that class, I just couldn't get enough. I loved learning the process of writing. I thought it was cool. I was astounded that there were formulas. Julie, like, oh, this is on purpose. They put a hook at the end of each chapter on purpose. This is a whole, it just was to me like light bulbs were just flying everywhere as I learned the process and realized that, there is a design to all the writing and stories. So anyway,
So
that's where
what was the name of your first published book?
um an unexpected love. So
Hmm.
so um the way that happened also was that I joined a critique group, and I started writing for the national market, and I went to a workshop, and I was not having any success at all. I would submit things, even short stories, and I've shown you my book of rejections because I kept all the rejection letters I received from everything I submitted. And there were like 67 of them. I counted one time. And I went to a workshop, and someone from Covenant Communications was talking, and she began talking about the regional market and the inspirational market. And I thought, maybe that was a better fit for me. And I didn't even realize it was an option. And so that again was an eye-opening moment for me. And I thought, wow, maybe that would be more up my alley to break into this because it fit my standards and my style a little bit better. And so that's when I approached them. And it took a while to get through that process and write something that fit their parameters and also fit what I wanted to write. So
Hmm.
once all the snags though, and I think my author or my editor back then, her name was Valerie Holiday. Did you ever meet Valerie?
Hmm.
Did
Yep.
Man, she just mentored me. I don't know why she liked me or what she saw in me, but it was because of her that she just kind of mentored me through the process. And she said two things. She said, we want to publish people who we know have more than one book in them because we don't want just one book out of you and then you're done. We
Hmm.
want, someone we can help grow and become, an established author. And then she also said, we have a saying here that we make monsters, because she basically said that some of the authors would become diva like a little bit. And That was a cautionary thing for me. Like she was telling, don't turn into that. Let's play nice. Let's all be nice here and we'll get a lot more done. And so I just, I think she just wanted to say, it's easy to get caught up in all this.
Hmm.
Don't do it. And I've never had a problem with that because I just feel like astounded that I even get to do this. So,
So, how many books have you written now?
my last one that just came out was the 27th,
Wow.
but kind of, I don't know how to count that because I have a lot of little booklets that are little Christmas stories.
Hmm.
And so if you count those, it's been about 27. Yeah. That to some degree is a lot, but by some standards isn't hardly anything. It's just, but that's what I had in me and that's what fit in my life
I
with
think
all,
that's great.
well, you know how life gets in the way. I mean, health things or family things. It's a
Hmm.
juggling act for sure.
So, one of those little Christmas stories was made into a movie. How was that to have your words and your book made into a movie?
Oh, that was exciting, but it was also, um, I had to really distance myself from the process of that because I had no control over it.
Hmm.
And I had no say in who, was cast for certain roles or their vision of who played certain parts. I mean, of course, because it was based on a true story, I knew I could visualize who the people were, but it went a whole weird direction from what my story was about. Yet they did keep really the heart and soul of the story, which I was happy with. And I'm like, I'm not ever gonna really complain about this because wow, that was such a cool experience. And it was quite endearing of a story. And the message is what I felt like was the most important thing.
And that,
So
what was that one called again? A Christmas
it's called Candle in the Window.
in the Window. That's right.
Yeah. And it's about my grandma, my grandma Ashman. And I wrote her one day. It was back when we actually wrote letters to people. And I wrote her a letter just to kind of let her know how my kids were doing and just what I was up to. And I said, hey, I'm just curious if you've written any of your life history and if you have any fun stories, that you could share with me, or I'd love to know anything about your childhood. And and then I gave her some prompts like, what's your favorite memory of growing up? And do you have any fun Christmas memories? And she wrote that story back to me and it blew my mind. It just boggled my mind. And I'm like, and then I called her and I'm like, this actually is true. This happened to you. And she's like, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what
Yeah,
happened to the little girl. So I thought, oh, this needs to be a story because it had such a sweet message to it.
it really did. I'm glad it got made into a movie. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thanks, Julie. I was too. And like I said, I can't complain because I'm thrilled that it happened. And again, they kept important part of the story, which meant the world to me.
Yeah, and maybe as authors, that's what we can hope for. Because if my one of my books is ever made into a movie, that's what I would hope for too.
Yeah, I'll help you through that. If that happens, call me so I can help you distance yourself from the creative control they take and
Yeah,
change.
we'll cross our fingers.
I, in
So,
fact, I've heard about that a lot. I just went to a movie called The Greatest Christmas Pageant Ever. You know that story?
mhm.
I guess the book was written years and years ago and it just became a movie. And I went and saw it the other night and I read about the author and she said she would never sell the rights for the longest time because she was so afraid Hollywood take her story,
Hmm.
take it and take away she did have it someone approach her and they wanted her to take the Jesus element out of it. Now
Hmm.
figure that out because it's about the nativity. I don't know what they
Yeah, that would be hard if it's about the nativity.
so she kind of stood her ground on that and I admired her for that. But I think that happens a lot. I mean, how many times do you read a book and then watch a movie and go, wow,
Not the
not,
same.
not the same at all. It's not even close. So
Hmm. So
but
if
I
you
hope that happens for you. I think your books would make such movies. Oh my word, yes.
Oh, you're sweet. My books would be expensive because of all the military element. Maybe the small town romances, possibly.
Definitely that, but yeah, but they got budgets. They can do it. We'll see.
Hey, let's put it out there in the universe. I'm all for that.
Hey, consider it
Hmm.
done. It's out.
So, if you could go back and rewrite your first book, would you?
It's so funny because I think as I was thinking about us talking today, I I don't know why I started thinking about my first novel. I don't even know if I could go back and read it. I don't know if it would be painful. If I, oh, how did this ever get,
Just because you were a baby writer back then, you know?
writer? Yeah, for sure. Um, well, and I mean, I don't know who's going to be watching this. Hi, everyone. For those who, because it's an inspirational book, it had kind of a niche
Yeah.
market.
Hmm.
Probably would want to give it more of a broader appeal because I felt like it had a really good story. It was really a heartwarming story.
Right.
But I don't know. That's a really good question. I know there's other books I wish I could tweak, and I don't know if you can leave anything alone. Do you ever go back and not want to change something?
No, in fact, I have a book coming out on Friday, and I was thinking, oh, I should have changed this, and maybe I should have changed this. But at some point, I just have to cut it off and say, this is the story.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think you're right about that. And then you'll hear people comment about it and they'll say, "Oh, I was thinking this would happen," or whatever, and you're like, "Oh, that actually is a good idea."
Yeah. Too bad I didn't think of that sooner.
And have you ever thought that if you'd written it under different circumstances, I mean, kind of what you want in the story, but had different things been happening in your life at the time, or you'd been a different mood or a different, do you know what I'm saying? Would have been a completely different approach to the story. I've wondered that. There's a lot of psychological stuff I think that goes into writers. We are kind of like a psychological mess of people when you spend so much time in our in our imaginations
Yeah.
with vicious people. It could be a little psycho if you think about it. It's
Well,
what
I
I
have
live.
always said that I think my books are a snapshot of where I was in my life at the time because, like you say,
I
yeah,
do
it's
too.
just where we're at.
I totally, totally believe that, Julie. I really do. I think there's a lot to that. And I think it does reflect a lot of us. As much as you can say, well, it's not biographical, but you can't help but put your heart and soul into everything you write. It's like a child.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about your brand new child, the new book that just came out, Stand In for Love. And it's
Okay.
a romantic comedy and set in New York. And I know you've been to New York several times. Did you do research when you were there, or did you just work on memories of being there?
I did. I had a recent trip this year and then one last year where I started the research and thank goodness for the internet because back in the day when I started, you had to go to the library and check out books and
Yeah.
encyclopedias and stuff. So it's so nice to have the internet, but I prefer if I can to visit a place, in person, just so you can get the feels and the vibes and the and
Yeah.
all the sensations that come. But I had a daughter live in New York. She was a ballet dancer, so I visited her a lot, and that's when I really fell in love with the city. And I think it's just kind of for me, such a fun backdrop for stories because it's got such a cool energy and you can play on that in so many ways. So, and I have one other book set in New York, but those are the only two I have, which is odd to me because I love that setting.
Hmm.
So, but I really wanted to use the city as a character in the book almost because it had a lot to do with why the characters or why the characters in the book were who they were.
Hmm.
Being in the city made them who they were, and it's about dating, and the struggles of dating, which happen even in small towns, not just in New York, but it played a lot into why that was such a difficult situation for them.
Where'd you get the idea for the story?
Um, well, my daughter got married 3 years ago, my youngest, so she's our last one. And there were times when I'm like, is anything going to go right for this wedding? Because I've done, this was our fourth wedding, and we had little things go off the rails here and there for the other ones. They weren't all perfect, but pretty much, we could get through them. Hers was disaster after disaster, and I just was like, and it was me not freaking out and trying to keep, you know, normal and calm so she wouldn't freak out. I was like, no, it's gonna be fine. Where inside I'm like, I don't think it is. Can't stop this rain. This rain is not gonna stop, whatever. Because it was in our backyard, and I'm like, oh no, what are we gonna do? So you're on Amazon ordering umbrellas for everybody or whatever you're having to do. And I thought, wouldn't that be funny if a couple was getting married, but they had to leave the country and ask their maid of honor and their groomsman, I guess.
Best
What's
man.
the what
Best.
best man? Thank you. To take care of all their last minute details, and then everything goes wrong. And I thought, I just started going with that idea, and oh my word, I went crazy with it because I'm like, pretty much all these things could conceivably happen, especially in a big city like that. So
It's a
it
great story. It was really cute.
fetched, I'm sure. I mean,
Well, it's
not
fiction, and that makes
everything.
it fun.
I think it's relatable for people who have been through a wedding because, you know, most people can say, well, not everything did go perfect or something went wrong and they get a kick out of it.
Now, earlier this year, you had Reign of Rosamund come out. Wasn't that correct? Did it come out at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, it came out in April.
Yeah. And would you say that's a fantasy or a romantasy?
Ooh. Well, I don't know if I can call it fantasy because there's not like any fantasy creatures really in it.
True.
Uh,
True. Kind of a more of a medieval. How would you classify it?
uh, I, I mostly classified it historical fiction, young adult historical, because it is medieval. It's just a fictional setting and place, but um, it is medieval. But I should have thrown a dragon in there. That would have been kind of cool.
Yeah, that could have been fun.
But that story came to me because I love Joan of Arc. I think that there's something so amazing about her at 16, leading armies and doing everything she did as a woman back in the 1400s, and I just thought, wow, she's such an inspiration. And I feel like girls nowadays, women in general, but especially young women, need stories that give them an understanding of who they are and that there's greatness inside of them and that they can do difficult things, and they just need to believe in themselves and understand, who they are and what they have inside, that they've got power that they don't even understand.
Hmm.
I'm like, I want to write a story that gives that kind of a message to girls especially, but women of all ages. And the thing is, she's young in the story, in the first one, maybe 8, I think, and by the time she takes the crown, she's in like 18, so that's span of 10 years. But for them, that's middle age, really, when you think that their life expectancy was mid 30s, 40.
True.
So even though she's 16, 18, she's really middle aged. She's really, in our terms, she'd be in her 40s. So
Do you think there'll be another book in that series, or is it a two-book series?
it was a 2 book series. I kind of wrapped it up only because I just didn't know what else to do with it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I have a lot of love. It's like we were just barely saying how much you can put in your books. That one took a lot of my heart because
Hmm.
I felt really, really strongly about that story.
Hmm.
I want to write because I love the idea or I love the characters or blah blah blah. But this one I felt like there was a real message that I needed to get out in the world.
Yeah,
So
I really did enjoy that one too.
thank you.
So I know you travel a lot. Have you been doing any research trips lately?
Wow. Every time I go somewhere, well, don't we all? I mean, as an author, it's like you open your browser and you just click on the news and you're like, oh, that would make a good story. We can get story ideas anywhere. I haven't got one specifically, although I will say the one I'm working on, I'm just in the beginning stages of writing character sketches and getting my plot worked out, and I'm starting research because I'm going to dip my toe into a Regency book because I have a story that I'm like, oh, this could really go crazy. Um, Luckily, I've been to the places recently. In April, we went over to Wales and England. And while I was there, I'm like, well, hello, this is where a story needs to be set because I've
Mhm.
never been to a folly before. And when I went to a fall, I'm like, oh, this has to be in a book. I love this whole concept, and I just think it's the most romantic and adventurous thing ever. And so, anyway, that kind of spurred me to come up with this idea. So, yeah,
Wow, you're like a multi-genre author these days.
probably not serving me well.
I think it's great.
That does me any favors because I don't feel like. I mean, I started my whole writing career as a contemporary romance author, and now I just have too many. I love too many genres. I mean, my heart and soul loves like Pride and Prejudice. I love it so much. So I'm like, why haven't I ever written a story set in that time period? I love it so much. What
Mhm.
I'm on an airplane, that's what I watch every time.
Yeah,
And I
I was the same way. I love historical romances and historical fiction, but I was afraid to write it because I thought it might ruin it for me if I didn't do it well. But
ah
then when I wrote I have a romance, obviously a Regency series of 3 books, and it went just fine. So it'll do
yeah,
the same for you, I'm sure.
I have that on my shelf. I I love it so much. In fact, I've learned a lot from your writing. I am a stealer of style. Like I'll read a phrase and I'll just love it so much, and I'm like, oh, I love how you worded something or how you phrased that interaction or depicted a certain, just even a glance or something. And so, I mean, I'm always just absorbing people's just,
Yeah.
and yours is one of them. So
Oh, thank you. I think every writer's like that. I'm feeling like I'm always absorbing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to plagiarize, but I certainly I'm going to say inspired by
Yeah.
how many brilliant authors there are in the world.
Oh, I know. There's so many good ones.
Yeah.
Well, what are you reading these days?
Ooh, well, most of my books are research books.
Oh.
Um, I do have, what was I reading? Oh, no, no, no. My friend was telling me about, here's another like obsession I have is World War II stuff.
Mm.
And so I want to read a book called A Woman of No Importance about a woman who became a spy for France. And because she was a woman, no one expected her to be up to anything naughty, but she ended up blowing up bridges and changing the whole course of the war because she flew under the radar. So I that's my next book I want to read. Um, in fact, I might listen to it because I understand the lady who read the story did a fantastic job. But
Mm.
another obsession, and I've never written a book in that era. Isn't that funny that we have and I love biographies. So I love biographies. I would love anybody. I love to read about people and their lives. I think one of the things as an author that is huge in my world is everyone I meet, I know has a story, and I just want to talk to them and just say, tell me your whole life, tell me. your whole life. We were just in Maine and we were waiting to eat at this place. And we started talking to a woman who ended up telling us that she put her child up for adoption when she was 15 because she was young and she lived in Maine and her parents sent her to Florida. She had her baby, gave it up, came home, and ended up reconnecting with that daughter years later. And she was telling us her whole story while we were standing in line waiting to go into this place to eat. And I'm like, that would be such an amazing story. It had such a good ending. It was such a happy, story. And I'm like, everybody has a story. And I do believe that that is our job as authors to write stories that people connect to because everyone's lived a remarkable life. They
Yeah,
really have.
I agree. I love that. Thank you. Well, my last question for you today is, and this is kind of apropos since you love so many eras, if you could pick any era in history, what one would you live in and why?
Wow. I do think of this. Isn't that funny? Because I write books like this medieval series. You can romanticize that all you want, but it would be the worst time to live, especially as a woman. But
Yeah.
to make it all, oh, it's all romantic, the knights in shining armor and blah, the dresses and all that. No, it'd
Maybe
be
if you were the queen, it wouldn't be bad.
maybe, yeah. But kind of miserable most of the time. I think I'm an old soul, and I do believe I was supposed to be alive. Well, I was born in 59, so I was the last of that era, but I love the 40s and 50s, that whole era, and the song, the music and the styles and all that. I just think that's when I was supposed to live. But again, I wouldn't have microwaves. I wouldn't have
Hmm.
maybe wouldn't know about them, so I wouldn't care. But
Yeah.
and having babies, I've been watching Call the Midwife, and I'm like, having babies back then would have been just the worst. So I don't,
Yeah.
Julie, that's a really good question because I love the world we live in. I mean, it scares me. There's a lot about our world that's scary to me, but
So convenient, though. I
is,
want
and we have access to past and all that. I
One of my kids' friends was so shocked that I lived pre-internet. They're like, you didn't have the internet? So it's so shocking. It's like the internet's still kind of new.
they'd really think I was ancient then because my first TV when we got married was black and white.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Teenagers, they keep us
Forget
humble.
that, did I? I do think though that I love the styles of the 50s and the music and the values. I mean, I just felt like it was kind of a more wholesome place, but yeah, I'm sure it had it. Oh, I'm sure it had its dark side, but
Sure, sure.
yeah.
I wonder if that's the appeal of small town romances, though, because some of us miss that time when, your neighbors all knew you, you knew them, and it was kind of more of an innocent time, possibly.
I'm going to go with that because I agree. I agree. I love small town life.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today and having our little book chat with Michelle Ashman Bell. I am so excited for your Stand In for Love. I hope everyone reads it. It's an awesome book. And
Thanks,
thank you again for coming.
Julie. Thank you. It's been such a fun time talking with you. I hope.
Yeah, it was great to catch up a little.
Hey, well, and good luck with your books coming out Friday. Exciting.
Yes, love lights the way.
I
Hooray.
privileged to read it, guys, and it's so good. I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to get through this as fast as she needs me to, and I totally flew through it. In fact, I let go. I let a lot of things go that I probably needed to take care of because I
Oh,
couldn't put it down. So
thank
thank you.
you for doing that for me. You are the sweetest.
It's gonna be great.
All right. Talk to you soon.